Okay, welcome to the October 27th edition of Alta Mesa Center for the Arts, featuring Jim Wilson, who's a musician and author of Tuned In, Behind the Scenes with Music Legends and Finding the Artist Within. Founded in 2021, Alta Mesa Center for the Arts is an interfaith arts and spirituality hub housed within and sponsored by Orinda Community Church. We believe that art is a spiritual act and a human right. We wish to provide a place where people from diverse traditions, artistic practices, and economic realities come together in community. We know that art can bridge the divisions, substantive and the arbitrary, that divide us. We come together not only to practice and teach the arts, but to celebrate and learn from our differences and to foster lively and respectful interdisciplinary dialogues. We seek unity in diversity. So wherever you are on your artistic or your spiritual journey, whoever you are welcome here. So, like I said, today we feature musician, songwriter, piano tuner, technician, and now author, Jim Wilson. Jim, welcome. We have a bit of your bio, but I thought I would leave that to your memoir, since this book is largely tracing your path from Texas to LA,
right,
to piano tuning school, to a technician job, and back to your passion of music, and along the way, all of the remarkable human beings that you meet and help shape you as a musician. So
yeah,
it's been a pleasure. I suppose I should say we worked together very early in this project. It was, what was it,
yes,
your first drafts that we saw together, or?
yes, absolutely. And in fact, halfway through my first draft, the beginning of the pandemic, I thought, okay, I have no more excuses now. I better sit down and start putting pen to paper on some of these stories that I've been telling for many, many years because of my unique circumstances. I had the incredible opportunity to have shared the same piano bench as Paul McCartney, and some limo rides with Elton John, and horseback riding with Dan Fogelberg, and road trips with Carole King. And I thought it's about time to get these down on paper. And as I started getting them down, it's like, well, I really want to get this right, And then that's when I found Ann Helmstedter's courses, and I started studying the craft of writing, the structure, etc. And it just kind of led me to you, and you were one of the first people to kind of help me kind of one-on-one start crafting this and shaping it, and teaching me the difference between story and scene, and where to the pacing of it, and where to speed things up, and maybe we don't need so much of that, and maybe you can slow this down, and it was quite a learning experience, and I still say that my journey as an artist, which is really largely what the book is about. Of course, the my journey as an author is as substantial as my journey as an artist. And if we were just to sort of break down the narrative, the what is the story about? It's insecure West Texas kid from a broken home, has music dreams, leaves his home to go to LA to seek his fame and fortune as a singer-songwriter, gets diffused with his dream by success, of all things, with what was going to have been a little sideline to, my piano tune business took off. And then somewhere along the way, I got the good fortune of being able to help develop the MIDI adapter for acoustic piano, the very first one in the 80s, which led me to meeting all these great artists. But really, it was halfway through the book and well down the road for me, about 20 years ago, the death of a dear friend that made me stop and reevaluate. Well, is that it? You just wanted to be the cool celebrity piano tuner guy, and didn't you have a bigger dreams, leaving some kind of art behind? So really, that's the meat of this book, is that the last half, the finding the artist within. Yes, there's some really fun window dressing and some great, unique behind the scenes stories with some incredible artists. But the part that I'm really grateful is connecting with people, is the part about the question of who do you become when you reach for the brass ring, you know, and you come face to face with yourself, you know. So, you know, the only obstacles between you and what you seek are the ones really inside your own mind. So it was that last journey, the battle to try to figure out, well, what is my dream? Well, who am I? What am I trying to say here?
Yeah.
And my original dream of becoming a, pardon me, I always joke that I came to LA to be the next Jackson Brown, and instead became the next Jackson Brown piano tuner. Um, but when my friend Claude died of a heart attack at the age 37 and made me realize, listen, man, this could be over at any second, that was the thing that made me stop and go, well, okay, that original dream that brought me here, that doesn't ring true. But I saw with Claude how quickly this whole thing could be over at any second. So that's when I had to go, okay, what's scariest for me is to take these piano compositions that I've been creating for my own spiritual gratification, not to please anybody, not to try to write the next big hit song, but, and no one's really probably ever going to hear these, but I sure do love playing these songs, man. It just gives me such great spiritual gratification. Well, it turns out that those would be the most true representation of who I am as an artist. And I decided to cobble 10 of those songs together into an album. That was my first album, Northern Seascape. And now here I am 10 albums later and two PBS specials and 100 million streams of my music. And, you know, so I would hope that it doesn't take the loss of a friend for people to get off their butts and pursue their dreams. But that's what it took for me. And so that's the overall narrative of the book. And then it was Mary who kind of helped me kind of refine and, okay, what of these stories really serves that narrative? And then you have to fillet out everything that doesn't serve that narrative. So you came in very early on to come back to your original question. You came in very early on, early drafts. I wasn't even all the way through my very first blueprint draft, as it were. But you were very helpful in getting me to kind of shape it into something that had a more clear narrative and a clear purpose, you know?
And one of the things I know we talked a lot about is where to begin. Do you begin at the beginning of the story?
Right.
And indeed, you began somewhere else. Would
Right.
you like to show us? Would you like to read a little bit
Oh,
about
I would be thrilled. How funny
where
that
you
you would
began the
ask. I
story?
just so happen to have that up on my screen. Um, I kind of intuitively knew. I didn't even know that it was called a prologue, but I knew that I liked movies, and I knew this device of you start off with the big explosion and then people dying or whatever, and then you cut to 4 months earlier. You know, in other words,
We should
how did we
clarify that
get here?
nobody dies in the making of this book.
Yeah. Well, not many people, only people who had it coming, honestly, you know. But I intuitively knew that the McCartney story, that's the one that I've told over the years, and people would just kind of light up going, oh my God, get to sit on the same piano bench as Paul McCartney. It's just
Yeah.
so crazy. And so I intuitively knew that that was going to be a good opener. And then, you know, in the limo ride back to London after a magical 4 hour hang with McCartney, I'm asking myself, how the hell does an insecure West Texas kid end up here on the same piano bench as Paul McCartney, singing Beatles songs, and then et cetera, et cetera. So, with a little drink of water here,
Mhm.
and Mary helped me refine this. She called it the first 50, right? The first 50 pages really have to be super tight. I went over this opener dozens upon dozens of times and filleted it down to the essence of it. Tuned in, Memoirs of a Piano Man by Jim Wilson, yours truly. Prologue, Meet the Beatle. August 30th, 1985. You must be Jim. He calls me by my name. And just like that, I'm once again the 8-year-old boy who obsessed over this icon's hit songs, the pudgy kid who yearned to enrapture fans with music, the dreamer whose life direction was shaped by the trail this legend blazed. Feels like I have cotton in my mouth. Amazingly, my lips move, words come out. And I'm guessing you must be, I want to say, Paul? He laughs and extends his hand. My anxiety begins to ease. I've met and worked for quite a number of celebrities by now, but this is Paul McCartney, a friggin' Beatle. His music has underscored my whole life, made me cry, laugh, sing at the top of my lungs, worked its way deep into my musical DNA. This is like meeting Mozart, Gandhi, and Obi-Wan Kenobi rolled into one. I mean, here's a guy who's literally changed the world with his music. But I don't have the luxury of succumbing to nervousness. I'm here on a limited mission to install an adapter in Paul McCartney's piano and show him how to work it. Thankfully, I can speak with assuredness about the adapter installation. I even suggest ways I could improve the touch and tone of his Hamburg Steinway B grand piano. Have I overstepped my bounds? But he smiles. Have at it, he says. We agree to meet the following morning, and I ask what time. 10-ish, anyone? He gives a grin and his iconic raised eyebrow. That a figure from the musical version of Mount Rushmore enjoys a corny dad joke puts me further at ease. Alone in his studio, I hit pause for a second to take in where I am. Hog Hill Mill, an 18th century windmill overlooking the English Channel that Paul's converted into his personal recording studio. Scanning the room, I see the usual trappings, amps, guitars, microphones, an ISO booth where vocals are recorded, rows of console tape with mixer markings stuck on the wall. But this isn't just any studio. It's the Santa's workshop where one of the most extraordinary musical geniuses of our time transforms the ideas in his head into reality. I sneak a closer look at the dozen drawings taped to the wall. Puzzled by these peculiar pictographs, I squint my eyes and try to decipher the first one. I slowly realize this is Paul's clever way to represent his vision of each song's mix. Each graphic is a roadmap of sorts, using different shapes drawn with the felt pens to depict the positioning of each element in the mix. Red circle in the middle represents the vocal, 2 green ovals to either side represents the stereo guitars, a black triangle at the bottom symbolizes the bass. I take in the row of guitars. 10 instruments and a stand is not unusual. I've seen as many in countless LA studios. But these guitars, one in particular has a distinctive shape that stops me in my tracks. I hold my breath as I ponder the history of Paul's left-handed Hofner bass, one of the most iconic instruments in all of modern music. What would it have been like to stand on stage enthralling screaming fans with this Hofner at Liverpool's Smoky Cavern Club, on the Ed Sullivan Show, in Shea Stadium, or atop the Apple building at that legendary rooftop concert? Drawing closer, the bass line to Come Together starts playing in my head, followed by Taxman, then Day Tripper. This instrument has anchored countless Beatle classics. At the Louvre, 15 feet is as close as you can get to the Mona Lisa. Glancing left and right as if there were a docent standing guard, I reach toward the strings and lightly pluck the low E. Man, if this thing could speak. Late into the night, I work to regulate, voice, tune, and install the Forte MIDI mod, the world's first MIDI adapter for acoustic piano. Just a couple of years earlier, I'd had the good fortune of having a hand in its development. Bartolomeo Cristofori's pianoforte fashioned from its meek predecessor, the clavichord, just 300 years ago. Now, for the first time, it could connect to the new world of electronics via our adapter. Looking back, it's humbling to think that I, a diffident kid from a small West Texas town, would become a part of a bridge from 17th century northern Italy to a recording studio on the south coast of England belonging to one of the most world's influential recording artists. So that's our first little opener there. It goes on, as you might imagine.
Yeah, I do remember that. I do
Yeah.
remember working on that and how you wove the history of
Yes,
music kind of throughout the book as you went on, but also your own history, which is where chapter one jumps into from
that's
your,
right.
we won't say how old you were when you met McCartney, but you're 7 at the
You
start
were,
of chapter one.
pardon me, you were so great about my early drafts and going, okay, how did that feel? You know, in other words, this whole thing, you had me slow this down and okay, what was it like? It's like, okay, you know, how did that make you feel? What was it like? And you know, I really expanded this whole thing into a much longer, much more detailed thing of the significance of being able to jump into this whole thing of what was it like, you know, to be in McCartney's studio alone and the Santa's workshop of, you know, one of the greatest minds of our history.
Well, how is it different? You have written a lot of music and you had written a lot of music before you started writing. What do you think the overlaps are between the two art forms and where do they completely divide, completely separate?
The art forms being,
Writing narrative, I suppose, in
yes, yes,
particular, and
yes.
songwriting.
Well, I am fortunate in that my mom was an English teacher. She was a polyglot. She could speak 7 languages. She taught 5. And she was always my kind of, she was my walking encyclopedia and my grammar coach. And she had a large input on my writing style. And I'm forever grateful for that. So, and then as a songwriter, you know, as a songwriter, you're always looking for le mot juste, as they say in France, you know, the perfect word. And you're trying
Hmm.
to, you, especially in songwriting, you have to whittle it down to just, you know, your first verse is kind of like your first 50, as you say in the writing world, in the book world. Well, that first verse, you've got to really come out of the gate hard and you have to really grab people's attention. So that opening line is so important. And then I always think of the, you know, the first rule of writing is show, don't tell, right? Well, the same thing with songwriting too. You want those, all the words that the scene to be very visual. Sorry. And so you're always looking for words that really have, you know, put the reader into the scene. And I
Mm.
think often about my friend Dan Fogelberg and his song "Same Old Lang Syne." And one of the lines in that song is, "She went to hug me and she spilled her purse, and we laughed until we cried." I mean, just those short words, you get a whole movie, you know. So you see the act. It's not just a visual word, but it's also an action. She went to hug me. She spilled her purse. You can see that,
Right.
and we laughed until we cried. It's just so many things. So I was always I did like 10 drafts of this book, and I kept going through, and one draft would be how much more visual can I get it? And then a little nugget search and how can I, what's the best way to say this without getting too floral? And
And kind of like a layering process, a track
yes,
upon a track upon a
that's right.
track.
Yeah,
You get
exactly.
a full tone.
Right. And so anyway, this meeting went on the next day. Paul comes in, he's in a light, playful mood, and it turns into this magical 4-hour hang. And 4 hours fly by. When he walks me to the studio door, he smiles and says, Anytime you're in the UK, just give us a bell. Uh, as the lush green fields of Sussex fly by the limo, a ray of sun lights my face. I catch my smiling reflection in the window. Part of the trick I played on myself to keep from getting overwhelmed was to convince myself this ain't no big deal. This happens all the time. But that mental Novocaine is wearing off, and I'm shaking my head, laughing, wondering how the hell I got here. I picture my chubby, insecure 7-year-old self. I wish I could embrace him and reassure him that everything's going to work out. I tell that music-obsessed miscreant from a broken home to just hang tough. There'll be plenty of challenges to come, but one day you'll blast off in a rocket ship built for one. You'll share adventures, sessions, meals, and laughs with your heroes, including Paul McCartney, Elton John, Carole King, and Dan Fogelberg. But more important than rubbing shoulders with them, your front row seat will provide you with a rare view of their creative processes that will inspire you on your own musical mission. Dark nights of the soul will push you to your limits, but they'll be the necessary fire that will forge you, helping you to tune into your deepest purpose. You'll perform to audiences around the world, have chart-topping albums, PBS specials, and your music will be streamed by millions of fans around the globe. I remember you nudging me to go maybe something darker, and foreshadowing the dark nights of the soul will push you to your limits.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
you
that
encourage me.
what struck me too in each draft of the book was how primary the creative process was. You're meeting Paul McCartney, but the emphasis is always for you and for him and for all of these stars. The artist comes out, and the
Right.
artist in you and the artist in them shake hands on equal terms,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
share a process together. That was enlightening for me, who also saw the people from a distance on the stage, but
Yes.
didn't really consider their own humanity.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, there's still a part of me that kind of gets nervous around celebrities and, and boy, as I've said many times, there's meeting a celebrity and there's meeting a Beatle. Nothing quite prepares you for that moment when you're actually um, face to face with somebody whose music is so deeply ingrained in your musical DNA. And
Mhm.
boy,
Kind of a saintliness to it in some
totally
ways.
a saintliness to his right.
Huh. When you wear, like, so each chapter kind of, we begin at 7 years old, and we're moving forward towards your decision to step back from this life that's introducing you to all these people and try music for yourself. How terrifying was that after meeting all these people to say, I'm gonna do this on my own terms, even if
Yeah.
it's not gonna end up as, even if I won't end up as a Beatle.
Yes. Scary as hell. And I think that's really the bigger issue of why we stop ourselves. It's
Mm,
that fear of saying, hey, everybody, here I am. I'm an artist. Are you
yeah,
really? Who the hell are you
right.
to declare yourself an artist? We have that fear that people are going to judge us. And certainly for me, especially by that time, I had really developed my following and my identity as I'm the celebrity piano guy.
Right.
And my clientele is the highest echelon of musicians in the world. And it's like, I'm also a recording artist. Hi. It was a really scary thing to step out as an artist, and especially instead of going for a hit song with a catchy hook, I'm going for the most vulnerable thing of here's my offering of would you like to come and smell this beautiful gardenia? It's
Right.
as vulnerable as you can get because they're piano featured instrumentals and kind of heartfelt, and it was really scary stepping out.
Yeah. Well, letting go of some established identity that you worked really hard to
Right.
attain, and step outside of that so that you can become who you are now, or who you were
Yeah.
always meant to be.
Yeah.
That's I think a lot of us in the audience can kind of relate to that. There's the things that make us enough to eat because of, and
Food
those
on the
things
table.
that must come out of us to become fully who we are. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things I think readers will relate to in this book. And I'm going to put the audio version up here in the chat because you will get not only Jim's reading, but you'll get some of his music as well.
Mm. I've been saying I'm so proud of the audiobook, and I've been saying that if there was literally one thing that I could leave behind, okay, you're getting the tap on the shoulder, the same one that Claude got, the same one that Paul, my brother, got, so that Dan got. You're out of here. What's the one thing that you want to be remembered by? My audiobook is it, because it's everything. It's like every good lesson that I've learned. It's every funny story I've been a part of. It's every great celebrity encounter and the spiritual significance thereof. But also it's incorporation of 38 pieces of my favorite music. And they worked so perfectly in this context. And literally every time that we would include one more little piece of music, what could go here? We'd put something in there. We go, God, it was literally like I had composed this for that moment. It's like I've been composing the soundtrack to my life all these years, you know.
It's up for a few awards, isn't it? Well, it is already.
It's on the first round ballot for the Grammys. So a
Okay.
book is not Grammy material, but a recording of a book. So there's a category in the Grammys called Best Audiobook Narration and Storytelling Recording. So it was submitted under that. I've had a ton of support. We'll find out in about another 10 days or so how I fared, but regardless, it's an honor to have been on the first round ballot, and the support that I've gotten for it is just amazing. Incredible feedback.
If I wish we were able to kind of put you at the piano and let them hear both now as we go, but because we can't, I wonder if you were willing to read another section.
Well, as a matter of fact,
As a matter of
I would
fact,
be
and
thrilled.
then we'll open to questions. So scribble questions, scribble notes, and we'll open to questions in about 15 minutes here.
This is one of the scenes in my book that I'm most proud, because I kind of kept developing it and expanding it. It was really Mary who, in the first drafts, this scene you're about to hear was originally maybe 2 or 3 sentences. And Mary said, no, slow this down. And the scene is me and my friend David Alsobrook, who was quite the we were kind of hellraisers back when I was 9, 10, 11, something like that. And or maybe early teens, but we would go carousing late at night. And one night we go to the radio station to hear this guy, Morgan Midnight, who's the DJ at this local radio station. And we want to hear, where all this wonderful music is coming from. And I had about 2 or 3 sentences about, we went up to the station and he let us in and we watched him as he spun records, and it was so cool. And you were the one who said, no, slow this down. This is your first encounter with a major celebrity, and so walk us through that. And and I just kept developing this. Each draft I would find another little way to put the reader more into this little moment. And so to
It's
give you
also
the
your
time,
meeting with destiny, right? You're
yeah,
meeting
right,
music
right.
in a public way for the first time. It struck me the first time you wrote it, and each draft you brought, I thought, oh, okay. So let's hear it.
So I'm talking this the other character in here is David Alsobrook, my partner in crime. He would go on to become an evangelical preacher later in life, but for now we're carousing late at night, getting into trouble. For the next few years, when we aren't listening to music or trying to write songs, we're dedicated juvenile delinquents. We sneak out of our respective houses after our families have gone to sleep, Cloaked by darkness, we do stuff like breaking into Crockett Junior High and taping Playboy centerfolds to the roll-down maps in the front of the classroom, then rolling them back up for a nice geography lesson surprise on Monday morning. South America never looked so enticing. A dinky portable transistor radio provides the soundtrack to our late night prowls. We listen incessantly to Morgan Midnight, the famous local DJ on the top 40 AM radio station, KFDA, playing all the hits all the time. Music is the through line of our lives, so one night we decide to find out where all those cool songs are coming from. Let's see if he's in there. It's the witching hours of a Friday night, and I'm fixated on meeting Morgan, a bona fide rock star in our eyes. We bang on the studio's glass doors until an unshaven dude in a t-shirt 2 sizes too small. I'm kind of proud of that line. Thank you very much. Unshaven dude in a t-shirt 2 sizes too small, his exposed white belly hanging over his belt, presumably the janitor, finally comes to see what all the commotion is about. Flips on a light in the lobby, cracks open the door a few inches. Yeah, what is it? Is Morgan here? Can we meet him? Yeah, you got him. What do you want? Turns out Morgan is hardly the Adonis we've envisioned, and he's the sole occupant of this postage stamp size facility. We hide our disillusionment and somehow coax him into letting us hang out with him as he spins the records. He leads us into the control room, clears some empty Chinese food cartons from a table, rolls up a couple of chairs. You're not supposed to be in here, so not a peep. He gives a stern look. We nod eagerly. We watch with fascination as Morgan, the biggest celebrity we could ever hope to meet, pulls out a 45 vinyl, cues it up, and waits until the current single is fading out. He dabs out his Camel cigarette and clears his throat. He flips a switch, and a red on-air sign illuminates over the door. Leaning into the microphone, he breaks out his hyped-up, heavily modulated DJ voice. That was She Loves You by the Beatles. Got a favorite song you want to hear? Give us a call on the request hotline. Now here's Carrie Ann by the Hollies coming at you. Between songs, Morgan chats with us two knuckleheads in his normal low-key voice. Record fades out, then boom, here's that amped up life as a party again. The disparity between those two personas is jarring, and I'll never forget how much smoke and mirrors gets pumped over those airwaves. It's my first lesson in image versus reality. While we've been conjuring up visions of a DJ bopping around to music, the reality was some lonely dude queuing up records in the midnight to 6 a.m. shift at a rundown office in a crappy strip mall. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That's been a while. I don't think I've ever had, I haven't read that final version yet. So it was a pleasure to hear it.
I kept kind of tweaking and adding, and I just love the image of dabbing out a Camel cigarette, you know, and clearing the throat, and just many visuals. And you and I had read Stephen King's book on writing, you know, and the whole thing of world building and creating the world for the reader,
and that theme throughout, the disparity between these two personas, the one that is in the imagination of the audience, the imagination of the reader in some cases, and the humble and often ugly work of making art. The
disparity between the two, and it's often quite a jarring disparity, and that's why, like with somebody like McCartney, when that's the real thing, man. What you see is what you get. It's really, really great.
Yeah, that genuine persona is not a persona at all. There's something substantial, and I think that comes through in the music. Some of our greatest artists, whatever it is, we realize it's not the mask at all. How does piano tuning as a craft influenced you as a musician and as a writer?
Well, honestly, the whole thing was just going to be a means to an end while supporting myself in LA. And I was playing in a couple of bands in Texas, and the keyboard players could tune pianos. And I thought, well, that's a great way to go off and make 25 bucks and charge a little bit more than that now. But and so I wanted to do it methodically. So I wrote to all the piano tuning schools in America. I found the best one in Cleveland, Ohio. Went there for 6 months. And I suppose the knowing the piano inside and out very intimately and taking them apart, putting them back together, gives me a greater appreciation for the piano. And but I'll say this, it was certainly turned out to be the most brilliant idea. And I do remember kind of lighting up when I got the idea of like, oh, I could, they could, they learned to tune. Somehow or another, they learned how to do it. I
Yeah.
could learn that too. And everybody that I want to meet in LA is going to have a piano. And what a great way to support myself while trying to make it as a songwriter. So that's piano tuning did everything that I thought of and more. I mean, look where it led me. It's just crazy, you know, put me in the company of all these great artists. And of course, you have to kind of earn their respect, you know, as
Right.
right. So it did.
And to have an incredible ear, I think. Both one of the things I noticed very early was you hadn't written a lot, but you had a good ear.
Yeah,
You could start to hear when things were working and when things weren't. And that seems to be the case also with the piano tuning, because I don't think all of us have an ear that is tuned enough,
as
capable
it were,
enough
as it were.
of hearing well.
But and there is also there's the tuning thing, there's the musicality of it as a
Yeah.
songwriter, as a pianist. That does get reflected in the writing in the
Hmm.
because I love the sound when you write a good phrase that has a good meter to it. Da da
Hmm.
da 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 da. It has a
Yeah.
good, it rolls off the tongue. It just feels good saying it, and it has a good um, meter to it, a good rhythm.
At one point, I think we were talking about the book as an album. Like, if it was an album, how would you, what track would go first? How would you organize the story so that it would be a pleasing progression through time? And so then you did decide to go with the McCartney part first and then
Um,
cycle back towards the future. So,
I had some pushback from different people on that at the beginning,
mm,
and number one, they were correct in that, well, how does this show us how this makes you feel? That I kept getting that.
yeah,
So I changed from the very, very beginning. You must be Jim. And then instead of going straight into the next thing in my response, going to the internal thing of like, he called me by my name. And just like that, I'm the
right,
8-year-old boy who yearned to enrapture people with music like he did. The pudgy kid, you know. So I was able to, right from the jump, make that prologue work in terms of how that made me, you know, who I really am, who's telling this story, but
right,
also frame this story in the context of it's not just meeting a celebrity, but you're about to meet a whole shit ton of amazing artists, and you're going to get a front row seat to their creative process, which will inspire you on your journey. So I knew that this McCartney prologue would be effective and a great way to frame the whole story. And then it becomes, you know, like I said, what serves this narrative, what serves this story.
right, right. And music is kind of outside in. You have to kind of penetrate the carapace of our inattention. But
Hmm,
writing
I
is
like that.
often inside out. You're exposing from the inside out
Interesting.
other human consciousness. And I think that was something that I didn't really understand until I met you. And then when we started talking about these different processes of making music and making narrative, it was enlightening to me. And I'm
Hmm,
grateful for that.
hmm.
Just for those kinds of conversations that we had around art and music and
Yeah.
how they how they're made and why they're made and why you stick to it. I remember your Excel sheet. Do you remember your Excel sheet?
I,
of scenes after scene after scene. I
oh,
mean,
yes.
this thing was the most detailed
Yeah.
plan of a book I have ever seen in my life. It was just exquisite, color coded,
Yeah.
chapter by chapter, scene by scene. It was
Thank you.
remarkable. It
Thank you.
was
Thank you. Well, it's a massive undertaking. And
yeah.
thank God I didn't know quite what I was getting into when I jumped in, because I would have gone, oh God, no. But
God, holy naivety. That's we all need that.
yeah, and it's just I've often said, when you're making an album, and every artist that I know appreciates this, when you're making an album, you've got 10 songs in your head. The composition, you want to make the composition as tight as it possibly can be. You want the mixes of each ones to be perfect. So you kind of load all of these as you're mixing the record and finally landing the plane. They're all loaded into RAM. They're all in your head. Well, I said to different artists, different friends, now imagine doing 10 albums at one time, because this was an 85,000 word tome. And I'm I'm so obsessive that when I get really in that creative process, my brain is working overtime day and night trying to, is it better to say, smoke and mirrors, or is it better to say, you're trying to find exactly the right word or turn a phrase, and you go, and you remember something in chapter 23 where you had a little roadblock. Oh, now I got the solution to that. So there's
Right.
this constant working and refining. And once you have that whole, the basic carpentry done and the framework is there, then it's an exciting thing of putting things together.
Yeah, putting all those pieces. And even that is hard work. But
Oh yeah,
but
God.
gratifying work.
Yeah. But
Let's
then when you get down to the little fine thing where you got the little tiny, tiny paintbrush and you're just going around the window frame and getting just the, you know, even those, I would just get so excited when I'd, like at the end of the book, I would, there's a phrase that says, um, and I know that whenever I get that tap on the shoulder, I will have a beautiful stream of memories, etc. And the word kaleidoscope. Oh, kaleidoscope is, it'll be a kaleidoscope of memories, and of course, as you're reading it, it all kind of just, it flows.
hmm
But
hmm
when you're writing it and you get le mot juste, the perfect word, it just, it feels so great.
Yeah. Well, and the perfect word is like the perfect note. It doesn't stand out in and of itself, but somehow brings the whole composition tighter together.
That's
So it
exactly right.
feels, yeah. Are there any questions? I know there's artists, there's writers, there's musicians among us. And
Yes.
if there are any questions, you can unmute yourself or pop it in the chat, and I'll give voice to it if you're not feeling like saying boo. Jenny,
Yes. I
welcome.
have
Hi, Jenny. How are you?
I'm well. How are you, Jim?
Great. Great. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for sharing. It's so wonderful to hear your story. I had your music playing in the background while you were reading.
Let me turn up the volume a little bit, and if you can get a little closer to the mic.
Yes. My question is, did you have to ask Paul McCartney permission to write about him and quote him from your memory?
No, no, and nor do you. And I had that concern right up until publishing. There's a story with Elton John where he gets in my face and says, "It's not the same fucking sound." And I wanted to water that down, and had several people. I talked to an entertainment lawyer, I talked to different authors, and said, no, no, no. It's the rule is, are you defaming them? And specifically, are you denying them income by something that you print? So it's not you're not slandering them, you're not defaming them. So certainly with Paul McCartney, pardon me, but if you sign an NDA, well, then that's another matter. There's a couple of different people that have had the pleasure of working on their pianos. Man, before you go up there, you sign an NDA, and I will
And that's
never
a
be
non-disclosure agreement.
non-disclosure. I can never use the word Justin or Timberlake in the same sentence ever again.
And
So
you didn't. We didn't hear it.
Nope.
yeah, it didn't. So to answer your question, no, you don't need to. I was very, very afraid of that.
Yeah.
That's one concern I had. The other was use of pictures and the use of lyrics. Apparently, there's a thing called a fair use copyright. So if I have like 2 lines, and so I had a book offer from Backbeat Books, and that guy was telling me that their rule of thumb is that 2 lines of a lyric is kind of fair use, and you're not depriving anybody of any income. But if I try to print the entire lyric to "Hey Jude," I'm probably going to get going to be hearing from one of the lawyers.
Hmm.
So you can tell a story about somebody. You can't defame them. If it's something that was confided in private, you might get in trouble. And the use of pictures, if it's from your personal collection, that's okay. But if it's a photographer who you hired, for instance, to take a picture, then you're going to need their permission to use the picture.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Jim, how did your family respond, or have they responded to this book?
Of all things, well, my son was the first one. I wanted to send him an early draft and make sure he was cool with everything and how I portrayed it. And he loved it. He really enjoyed it, and because I do kind of tell the intimate details of how when I was playing in a band when I was in my teens, I got a girl pregnant, and she calls me and says she's going to be a mom, and I'm going to be a dad, and it flipped me out at the time. Ultimately, that would become the biggest blessing of my life, that my being a father and my being a grandfather of 4 kids, and so it really kind of freaked me out. But I wanted my son to be down with the portrayal of this. I sent him an early draft. He really loved it. My sister did give me some props. She said, I guess we were seeing things from a different lens, and even when you were the one, Mary, who said, coming up with a log line for this, you said, come hailing from a broken home in West Texas, like broken home. I didn't, and it's like, no, dude, that's the very definition of a broken home. Your parents divorced when I was 9, and very acrimoniously, and they split up, and it's a broken home. So much of what I was concerned about, God, my sister, I hope she's going to be okay with how I portrayed this. Well, first of all, it's my story. And as she said, we kind of saw things through different lenses. I never did get a chance to, hear exactly how she thought the different lenses were.
Hmm.
But very, very positive responses. And my niece was one of the first to just go, God, it's so great. You're wonderful storytelling. And anyway, it's a lot of fun.
You dedicate some of your music to your mom. I can just imagine her enjoying this, reading this, and thinking in some ways that it is an homage to everything she did for you
Yeah.
from the time you were little.
She was the lover of the arts. And yeah, boy, if there's any regret, it's that she didn't get a chance to read this, because I'm very, very proud of how this turned out. And I spent 4 years massaging and tweaking and working with you and different editors, and triangulating this editor against that editor, and making sure that I filleted it down to the absolute best of the best of the best. So it would have been great for her to have read this, but
I think she would have loved it, Jim.
yeah.
I'm sure she would have.
Yeah.
Was that the one difficult thing? One of the hard things, I think, is once you let someone else into your work to comment, suddenly you have either a stronger notion of what it is you want to do, either because you reject what they say, or you find yourself wondering if that vision is in fact the vision you should pursue. How did you find, out of all of those voices, the one true voice that you followed?
That's a great question, and the same thing applies with music. So many people say, "Well, God, I don't want anybody to hear it. I just, because I don't want anybody to have influence." No, I want everybody to hear it, and then it's up to
Hmm.
me, as the artist, as the songwriter, as the composer. If somebody says, that verse is weak or whatever, I'll take that in consideration. At the end of the day, you as the artist, you as the creator, you're the arbiter of taste. You're the one who decides if that's true for you or it isn't. And I did get enough notes from different people on the opening. It's like that prologue is great, but it doesn't really tell us about you. And so once I got that note enough, it's like, oh, okay, they're right. So
Everybody can't be wrong.
you have to be willing to take in the slings and arrows and find out if it's true for you or it isn't. And if it's not, then you stand your ground. One of the things that I did that I was really, really, that I liked, I played with switching tenses from past tense to present tense. And indeed, there's the rule of writing where you just basically don't do that. You choose one or the other. But I thought it was so much more powerful to go from setting up a scene in past tense and then switching over. And I had to really refine that whole process. And if it's in past tense, it stays in past tense. If it's in present tense, then you make it very, very clear that we're switching tenses. And I would set it up in past tense, and then I would do a whole section separator, and I would say, but now it's a cold January night, and David and I are on the prowl. So you switch over into present tense. And for me, it's telling an anecdote in present tense is so much more powerful. It really does just bring you right there in that moment.
Yeah, and that goes back to the number one rule in making art, that if it works,
Yeah,
regardless of what the
yeah, yes.
Any other questions?
In the chat. All right.
Grace is looking at the chat. No. Well, I think we could
Yeah,
go on,
yeah.
and if you're waiting for the camera to go off before you ask a question, that's your prerogative. That's just fine. Our next event coming up on November 24th at 4 p.m. on Zoom, we're going to launch Percussing the Thinking Jar, a new book by Ma Shane Wynn, and I will put the
Wow.
link here in the chat. Oh, here we go. Here's a question for you, Jim. And that's good. Thank you, Anna. We won't conclude soon, but I always forget to say what's coming up next. So this is what's coming up next.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about this book and very proud of my friend Ma for her artistic process and her inspiration. Anna says, or Nicole, do you go by Nicole?
Anna.
Would you like to speak your question?
Okay, sure. Hey, Jim.
Hi.
So thinking back to when you first started tuning our piano, and I won't date that, because I'll feel pretty old. But were you like writing music and doing all this stuff at that time?
I was, but I was sort of keeping it under wraps. Really, I think at that time, by the way, Anna just lost her father within the last year or so.
3 months.
Jerry Fuller, who was a legendary songwriter, he wrote "Young Girl, Get Out of My Life," some really big hits, and Jerry and I were on the board of governors of NARIST, the Grammy local LA chapter, and that's where I got to meet him, and he was a great dude. And I think at that time, Anna, I was more kind of presenting myself as a piano tuner guy, and maybe yeah, conversant in different songs, but no, never really stepping out as an artist or whatever. And like I said, it really took the death of my friend Claude for me to realize how quickly this could be over. It just,
Mm.
I saw how Claude died with a dream in his heart because he was a songwriter who'd had hits by Celine Dion and David Foster's right hand man. And then, and 2 months or so before he died, he played me this beautiful sonata on piano. And he had wanted to step out as an artist. All this success as a songwriter was all fine and well, but he really wanted to be known as an artist for his music. And when he died, I saw how quickly that dream can vaporize just overnight. So it took that for me to like get the courage to go, okay, yeah, it's going to be scary as hell, but I have to do this. I mention Claude in every single interview I do because it was his passing that really changed my whole life.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and Ma, I look forward to hearing more about your book.
Thank you so much. I love your talk. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here and chat with you guys.
And that note too, don't wait. Sometimes I think, well, after the next season, or after my son turns 13 instead of 12, after. So
Right.
maybe don't wait. And hopefully too, with the camaraderie and community that Alta Mesa Center and Maker Mentor Muse provide, you will have the courage just to step out and try and make the few fumbling steps forward that you need to make the next few. And if we can be with you on that journey, it's a pleasure. It would be an absolute pleasure. Jim, thank you. Let's
Thank you,
unmute
Mary.
or do your emoji clapping, however it is you want to celebrate this man and his courage and his artistry.
Jenny, Bev, Ma,
It's been a tremendous pleasure.
Phyllis, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Emery,
Jim,
Bobby, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for being here.
All right.
Bye-bye.
That's all for now.
Toodaloo.
you.